Magic community on YouTube. I'm T1 Glistener Elf. We're at 3,000 subs now, and as I promised, here's our AMA. If you asked a question in the comment section of the AMA announcement video, and or if you donated on Patreon, I have a quick question of yours to answer. But first, green tea, why not? Alright, we're going to start off with a quick question from Vladictus, I think is how you say your name. And it's actually a good thing that this is the first question, not just because it's a Patreon one, but also because this seems like it would be a fairly common question, right? What is your favorite deck in each of the following formats? Legacy, Standard, Modern, and EDH. Well, as a general rule, it's Infect. It's whatever Infect deck I can play. In Legacy, that of course means Simic Infect. I've tried running Bug before, the only black cards being sideboard cards like Dread of Night. Right now I'm rocking Simic. As a general rule, if you want to know what deck I'm best with, maybe not my favorite, but best with in a given format, just, it's Infect, period. I've tried it in Vintage, in Legacy, in Modern, in EDH. I love it. So yes, Simic Infect. Standard. This, on the other hand, well, first of all, there's not Infect, and unfortunately I actually wasn't playing Standard when Infect was around. I wish so strongly that I had been. But that was during my hiatus, I guess, from Magic. College, it's expensive. Here, at least, it is. So, my favorite Standard deck, I've never actually delved into Standard terribly deeply. Of course, it's an expensive format in the long run, if you have to try to keep up with decks every time there's a rotation or a new set that's released. It's too expensive. So, instead of actually trying to build a tier 1 deck, I sort of make a game out of the game. I like to make, it has to be a mono blue deck, unless it's a fog deck, preferably both. And if that sounds stupid and annoying, that's probably because it is. No, in all seriousness, I like Turbo Fog. I like trying to make Turbo Fog a thing in every format. Even if it's not an actual fog deck. For example, currently we have Icy Blast, we have Blinding Spray, we have the extra turns cards, Part the Water Veil, and Temporal Trespass. I like trying to make those into fogs. A Displacement Wave. Back in the day we had Dictative Crucifix as the Howling Mine. I say back in the day, that last Standard, when Theros was around. Dictative Crucifix, Whelming Wave. Something else I can't think of. There was another fog in there somewhere. Anyway, so for example right now, I have a mono blue, I had to borrow like half the deck, but it's a mono blue turbo turns deck, or I guess you'd call it taking turns. It's annoying, admittedly, but it's something that I like to try. It not necessarily just to have as a main deck, but just to make it happen, or at least try to make it happen every format. So every Standard, every time there's a rotation, that's what you're going to see me try to do. I'm actually working with the owner of our LGS over here in Clarksville, the Missing Piece, on a Awaken control deck. That's a blue-white, Narset, no real creatures, they're all Awakened, so on and so forth. I think it'll be cool, I hope you enjoy it. Anyway, so with that being said, the next format was Modern. Infect, of course. I'm T1 Glistener Elf for a reason. Same reason, I just very much like the speed of it, but at the same time the rewards that you get for being patient. I like how it attacks decks from a somewhat different angle than they're used to attacking. Life gain doesn't work, your clock is very short. It forces Modern to be fair, in a way that a lot of other decks don't necessarily. See, Infect, yes, can kill on turn 2, turn 3 with decent consistency, but the issue is that Infect is not. I like to think of Infect in contrast to Bogles. Bogles is slower than Infect, we know this. But Bogles can afford to be slower because the creatures are much more resilient. Hexproof is huge in Modern. Infect, your creatures are faster, but you died to Lightning Bolt, you died to Path to Exile, and those are 2 of the top 3, or at least top 5, most played cards in Modern. So if you're playing Infect in a format where Lightning Bolt is the most played card, you're getting what you ask for. You know it's coming. You have to play more patiently. If you're the kind of player, if you're the kind of pilot that just tries to jam T1 Glistener Elf on one land, and then it dies and you wonder why, that's why. Or you jam the T1 Glistener Elf and then they hit your Glistener Elf with a Path to Exile after you've pumped it twice. You sort of knew that that was coming though, right? If you're not playing patiently. I think that that's what separates beginner Infect players from not even more professional, but more proficient Infect players. That's a long way around that question. The answer is Infect. Sorry. And then EDH. I actually do have a Damia Infect deck, Damia Sage of Stone, but my favorite is Animar, which, depending on how you look at it, either makes me a terrible person or makes me a war criminal now. Now, Animar, not so much because of its ability to play in multiplayer, because every time you sit down with Animar in a multiplayer EDH game, it turns into a game of archenemy. So, that being the case though, the actual comboing off with Animar, I find endlessly fascinating. I have spent on camera 15 minutes comboing off on it on my turn. Just dumping my creatures onto the field, drawing a ton of cards, making a ton of mana. And it's just what I find extremely rewarding about the deck. It's a puzzle that's different every time, at least the way that I've been playing it. I've never finished my Animar deck, I never will finish my Animar deck. I've had to sell pieces from it already, so I'm sure I'll never finish it. But I enjoy being able to play it, and on turn 4, hopefully, if everything goes well, on turn 4 or 5 at the latest, just going crazy with the cards that I'm casting. So that's our Patreon question. There were others that donated to the level where they could get a Patreon question in, but I wasn't able to get a response from them before this. So if that happened to be you, send me a message. I sent you a message on Patreon. Reply to that, and I'll put it in the next AMA. So I apologize for that. Our next question comes to us. We'll get to the Reddit one. Well, there's one from Reddit. I'll get to that later. So Neoghoul Cyberdragon, who by the way submitted a video to this channel, it's a deck tech for Absent Allies, go and check that out, asked me, what made you start playing MTG? And like many of you, it was my friends. I was in high school, I was around in Lorwyn Block, and my friends were playing and they let me borrow decks. My parents were very conservative in the sense that they thought that Magic was satanic, like literally satanic. And so I couldn't get my own Magic cards for a while. So until I had my own job, which it's about a year, it was from Lorwyn, so until Shards of Alara, I could not get my own cards, and so they let me borrow decks. So by the time that I actually was able to buy my own cards, I already sort of had a jump. I knew how to play the game. My favorite color at the time was black, and when I bought my own cards, I played a mono black mana ramp life drain deck. It was weird. It was weird. Don't ask. I don't know. I had hippie in there. I also had drain life and consume spirit, I think, something like that. The object was just kill their stuff and stall the game until I could drain them for a bunch. It was very, very casual, but I loved it. So that was what made me get into Magic. Same thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! Same thing with basically any other game that I've gotten into, with the exceptions of like single-player PC games like Dark Souls. I say single-player. There is a multiplayer, but you know. So, Yu-Gi-Oh! Hearthstone to the extent that I've been able to get into that, Force of Will to the extent that I've been able to get into that, Pokemon. It was all because my friends were playing it, and so I got into it. Even if I didn't buy the cards, I could still understand the game on a theoretical level. Sophie, parentheses, Steve, in parentheses, ask, I know this is personal, but what happened with your ex? It might be over the line, but I thought I'd ask. I'm glad you have that self-awareness, because I'm pretty sure that she or someone in her family or one of her family friends is watching this video. If you've been an avid viewer of this channel, you've probably seen comments from one of the family friends, basically trolling. So, that being the case, I can't really give you a full response to that. Let me just say that she is living in another town. She has temporary custody of the child, which means we haven't gone to trial yet, we haven't gone to court. But we have an agreement that in the meantime, she has her the vast majority of the time. She's the one that left with her. She had her for a long time before we got a temporary order in, and so unfortunately she kind of had more power over who gets to, you know, if I submit a proposal, it's easier for her to say no than the other way around. So that's the way that it is for now. I will say that I'm actually rather hopeful going forward. It sucks when you have to sell your card collection. A lot of it, not all of it thankfully, but a lot of it. But like a lot of you have said, priorities. I'm trying to keep my priorities in order, and she is worth just a lot more than tropical islands and whatnot. Next question. What do you think about casting Emrakul with Fist of Suns in Modern? This is from Finlay Murdoch. I'm trying to see how that could work. I mean, yes, I know that it works mechanically, but as a deck, the reason that I say that is it's fairly slow, I think that we can agree. So I imagine that if you were to do something like that, you would have probably a 5-color control deck. 5-color, of course, it's Fist of the Suns, and control so that you can stall the game until you get to that point. And then when you do, 5 mana, take an extra turn, swing 15, flying, Annihilator 6, so on and so forth. Seems good. Seems good to me. The trick is just being able to stall the game. I like to think of control as being, if your control is good enough, any win condition will do. And while that's an exaggeration, it doesn't go quite that far. There is a kernel of truth to that. If you can keep the game on lock well enough, then it almost doesn't matter what your opponent has, or what you have to win. What do you think of the new Eldrazi decks in Modern? Well, so I main Infect, which means that I'm one of the relatively few decks that has game against Eldrazi. I was really disappointed to see, of the decks that I saw anyway in the Pro Tour that were Infect, none of them had Distortion Strike or Slip Through Space, at least not in the main board. That really disappointed me. I saw Apostle's Blessing, but if they had seen the Eldrazi coming, and they should have seen the Eldrazi coming, Apostle's Blessing does nothing to get by them. If you're expecting a lot of burn, Apostle's Blessing is less good than... I mean, it's still protecting your creatures at the cost of 2 life and a card. Something like Distortion Strike or Slip Through Space gets you by all of their creatures. Without as good protection, but that's what Ranger's Guile is for. I actually think Ranger's Guile, in that particular Pro Tour, when the meta is much smaller, the player base is much smaller, and you can sort of predict more readily what's going to happen, I think that Ranger's Guile would have been better there. Call me crazy. Feel more than free to call me crazy. But that's what I think. Or maybe some more... Maybe you could run Groundswell, so that you can fetch on your opponent's turn, and with Landfall now it's +4/+4. Anything to get you around Lightning Bolt. and Searing Blaze and Searing Blood and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be Ranger's Guile, but you get the idea, something along those lines rather than Apostle's Blessing. Because at least in that case you have something to use against 5/8s that are stealing your lands, or 5/5s with Trample and Haste that you're not killing anyway because, okay, I'm talking a lot about Infect specifically. Let me go back to answering the question, sorry about that. I think that they're too good for Modern. I like that the Wizards is giving them a chance. They're not being emergency banned. We're seeing how the format adapts to them. I think that the Pro Tour was a little bit anomalous. I don't think that Eldrazi is that good, that it's going to be 75% of the top 8 decks every tournament. I strongly suspect that that will not be the case. But I think that it's Tron on steroids. Which is to say, you're getting fast mana, actually more quickly than Tron, because Tron, of course, we're talking turn 3 usually, right? Whereas in this case, you're generating 2 mana on turn 1. 2 mana. With Eye of Ugin, it's up to 12 mana, right? With Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth's, Eye of Ugin is basically Mishra's Workshop in Modern. And if you have a format where Mishra's Workshop and Sol Ring, Eldrazi Temple, not really Sol Ring, you get the idea. If you have a format where those are legal, your mana is too fast. No, Eldrazi does not break the turn 4 speed limit, but it's not that... It doesn't have weaknesses, I guess is the way that I would put it. With Splinter Twin, they could print a lot of really good hate cards against it. They tried this with Birthing Pod as well. You could see, for example, there's Torpor Orb, there's Rending Volley, there's Combust, Spellskite. There's a lot of cards that you can bring in to fight Splinter Twin. In this case, though, what do you bring in to fight the Eldrazi? You could try something like Blood Moon to make their lands not work, but that's kind of slow against a deck that's very, very fast. You can't Chalice them. They're playing Chalice in some cases. You definitely can't Chalice them. Kill spells feel really bad. The cheap kill spells, which are the ones that you need, may not be enough to kill the Eldrazi, and you may not make it long enough to get to Wrath, and even if you do, they can come back from that, thanks to cards like Eye of Ugin. Anger of the Gods, just... What I mean to say is that removal tends not to be very good against this deck. If it's mass removal, it's too slow. If it's spot removal, you're Reality Smasher or you're just not enough. You're not good enough. Even Dismember doesn't take out your 5/8. That's saying something. Your Kolaghan's Command, what can you kill for 2 damage? Yes, I know you can. I know you actually can, but as the game goes on, you can't, no. I think that the Eldrazi deck will have Eye of Ugin banned, and I would imagine that Eldrazi Temple will not be banned. Not yet. I could be very, 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 very wrong. Watch me be wrong, right? I think that they're going to go... No, I'm seeing both sides of the coin here. When Treasure Cruise was banned in Legacy, Dig Through Time was allowed to stay for a little bit. It wasn't banned immediately. They gave it some time. It was less degenerate in that format. But, on the other hand, in Modern, Dig Through Time was banned as well. I think Eldrazi Temple is Dig Through Time. I can see it going either way. I think that they're going to try to take out Eye of Ugin and see if it slows down enough. Maybe at that point, it's fine to have 2 mana for a very specific tribal. Maybe that'll be alright. Eye of Ugin is much more mana. I say much more. It's kind of the same amount of mana, but if you have multiple creatures to play on that turn, it's 2, 4, 6, 8 mana. It's 3 mana at a time with Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. It's just a really, really good card. And it gives you late game inevitability by going and getting your giant Eldrazi at the very end. Need to remove some problem permanents? Just go and get your Ulamog, the new Ceaseless Hunger. There we go, not the old one. If you need to refill for card advantage, get Kozilek. If you need to get in a beater right now, get Reality Smasher. If you need to take something from their hand, get Thought-Knot Seer. So on and so forth. Eldrazi is a deck that has fast mana for big creatures that have built-in interactions. That is an awful combination for this format. It's not breaking the turn 4 speed limit, but it is too hard to disrupt. You have to outrace it. And how do you outrace Eldrazi in a format that has a turn 4 speed limit and that purposely crimps its combos? That's very hard to do. I'm trying. But there we go. So that's my answer. Thank you very much, Mordred, for that question. I appreciate that. Next one. I'm really worried that I'm going to mispronounce that. One, Winyaski, forgive me if that's mispronounced. I am entering in the world of Smash. Any advice for a noob? Trying to main Fox. Love him. Well, since you said trying to main Fox, I'm assuming that you're talking about either Melee or Project M. Certainly doesn't have to be. Fox is good. Fox is very good. Pretty much throughout the games. And so, if that's the case, if you're really into Fox, the first thing that you need to do is practice a lot of tech skill. Practice a lot of tech skill. Fox may or may not be the best character in the game. I don't know where I fall on that, but I think that, no, I don't think that, I know that he is the most technical character in Melee. If you're going to be anywhere near good with Fox, you're going to have to be very technical. Even at my level, and I am not good. I am very much not a good player. If someone just picks up Fox, he may be the best character in the game, but I can body him with Luigi. Because Fox is a very high effort, high reward character. Until you get to that point where you have the skill to make Fox work, he's a glass cannon. He's very easy to take out. And if the cannon can't fire, he's just glass. So work on your, so some things you should practice a lot. You don't need to start working on multi-shining right now. Don't worry, that's something you can get to later. That's not the kind of tech skill I'm talking about. But be practicing up throw into up air in response to various DIs. Be practicing down air, grab, up throw, up air once you get up throw, up air down. Because that's going to be a very common approach for you. Practice your shuffles. If you can short hop, fastball, laser, I'll cancel. But, if you can practice your shuffles, once you get short hop lasers going, that forces the opponent to approach you, and that takes away some of their options. It gives you a bit of an edge, because now they're forced to play on your terms. You're already Fox. You probably have the most options of any character in the game. Before you get to any of that, though, I probably should mention, I don't know if you're at this level or not. Practice short hopping. Just get to the point where you can consistently short hop. You have that 2-frame window. I'm not saying it's easy, but until you get to that point, you're going to be hampered by your own skill. So practice short hopping with Fox. Practice shortening. I'm giving a lot of advice on Fox here, or how to play Fox. Practice shortening. That's a tool you're going to need in order to mix up on recovery. I like to say that there are 3 types of recovery in Melee: good, Fox, and bad. As long as you have enough, as long as you're above this stage, you're getting back as Fox. It's easy enough for you to do that. Below the stage, probably not. Middle of the stage, you need to be able to mix up. So that's something else. And there's lots of other tips. SSBM Tutorials, the YouTube channel, has a lot of good videos on how to play Fox. So go and check those out. They've been doing this for much longer than I have, and I'm flattered that you asked me, but I'm probably not, no, I'm not the best person to ask about getting into Melee super competitively. So while I'm on this, a very similar question. Luigi? That was a question that was asked. I'm skipping ahead to the non-YouTube questions. There were some asked of me in person, so I'm going to answer those. But while I'm on Smash here, the question was, Luigi? Yeah, so originally I was a Jigglypuff main, and I chose Jigglypuff specifically, I kid you not, because I figured that Jigglypuff was the closest character in Melee to Glistener Elf. I figure you can play sort of a fair game by just beating them out with back airs, or you can up throw rest, or up tilt rest, or one of a number of rest combos that feel very much like an infect combo going off. So that's why I chose Jigglypuff. But I wanted to learn how to wave dash, and to do that I practiced with Luigi. And then I just fell in love with Luigi. I don't know. I watched some Abate combo videos, and I watched Abate Voodoo Jin play against each other, and I watched Abate S2J, and the Invisible Ceiling Glitch, and I watched SSBM's tutorials, Master tutorial video on Luigi's approach. Yeah, I don't know. I love playing the character. I know he's not top tier, but he's so much fun to play. It's Melee on ice. It gets a little annoying after a while, just going, yeah, 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 yeah. But people complain about Sheik too. Two. It is what it is. Once I get good enough with Luigi, I hope to take him to serious tournaments. And we'll see how that goes. We don't really have any serious tournaments here in Clarksville, but back in Athens, where I'm from, over at Dragonstar Hobbies and or Card Advantage, certainly Card Advantage, and I think Dragonstar still does them, there are Melee tournaments. And so I plan to come over there, and the best player in the region, in the very small region that is Athens, Clark County, is a Peach main. I might bring out Jigglypuff for Peach. Other than that, Luigi all the way. I want to make a point. I do. And plus, also, Donald Trump doesn't like Luigi mains. If you get that joke, if you get that reference, good on you. You win an internet. I give you an internet. Archibald asks, if you're ever in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, do you want to play Super Smash Bros. Melee with me? Yes, and I fully expect to be bodied by you. I don't even know who you are, I've never seen you play, but I fully expect to be bodied. I still have a lot of work to do. Right now I'm working on L canceling, I'm working on teching consistently, and I'm working on wave dashing, not just on the ground, but wave platform dashing and coming off of a platform into a wave dash. Until I get stuff like that down, I fully expect that just any random competitive Melee player is just going to crush me. But yes, I would love to get bodied. That does sound a little bit weird, doesn't it? I would love to get Shrek'd. That almost sounds worse. And plus, so, a little bit extra on top of that question. I actually thought about moving to Canada. Part of that was for college, and part of that was I love Canada. I say I love Canada. I love the idea of Canada. Maybe if I get there, it's grass is greener on the other side. Maybe. I'll actually get to that in a future question. That's coming up. It's the next question. Actually, yeah. It's the very next question. What do you think about the USA and the state you live in? As a stranger, I'm curious to know what an American thinks about the country where he lives. From Alessandro Chiara, which, by the way, you are one of my longest subbed, you've been around since pretty much the beginning of the channel. You know, not the actual beginning, but feels like it anyway. So, thank you, by the way, for that. What do I think about the US? Oh my goodness. I don't say oh my goodness. What I mean by that is that I am a little bit worried that some people are going to watch this video, hear what I have to say, and never watch me again because of political views. Regardless of what I say, whatever people disagree with may be enough that they won't come back. So I am a little bit worried about that, but that being said, honesty is the best policy, so let's go with that. Prior to Evangeline being born, I guess it's important to know that she was an accident, right? No. There's a reason I'm telling you that. We had actually been planning on moving to another country before we had our first kid. in the United States, we don't have paid parental leave. We don't even have paid maternity leave. We don't have mandatory paid leave, period, for anything. You get up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave, and even that doesn't apply to all workers here. So I had been planning to move to just about any other country in the world has paid parental leave to at least some extent. So that's one reason. The healthcare system here isn't all that great. Granted, I also live in a state that a lot of people that aren't Americans aren't going to know what I'm talking about, but you can tune me out for just a moment, I'll be right back. We have a program here called Medicaid, which is single-payer healthcare for poor people. Poor people. And it tends to be better than private care as far as like the satisfaction rating goes, and of course it's taxpayers, it's already paid for by taxes, so you know, that's covered, that's good. There was a law passed a few years ago that tried to expand that to the whole country. Our Supreme Court said the states can refuse to take it. My state is one of those states. I would be covered under that, but my state refused to take this particular expansion of Medicaid, and so I'm not insured. If you live in a country that is not the US but is a developed country, and you have single-payer healthcare or strictly controlled markets for your healthcare system, like in France or Germany or that sort of thing, it may be a little bit unthinkable that you could have a lot of people that I can be uninsured for not making enough money. That is, however, the case. You know, I am quite a bit in debt. My wife, is quite a bit in debt to both of us to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. I think she's maybe $10,000 more. That is really expensive because anyway, long story short, I feel like I'm going to sound like I hate the US. I don't hate the US. There's a lot of things that we could be doing that we aren't doing, that I wish that we were doing, and if you don't expect to get those in the short run, one thing you could do instead is just move to a country that does have those. Before someone in the comment section says, well fine, we don't want you anyway, or something like that. Again, there are people watching to troll me. It happens. I do worry, though, a little bit that one person doesn't make that much of a difference, but, you know, if I leave the US, that's one less vote to get those kinds of policies in place. Probably not worth it if it's the difference between, if it's one vote versus my daughter and I living in a place that's maybe a more vibrant social safety net, more, I don't know. I want a much longer video to talk about this. I feel like I just have to condense everything down. And who would listen to me talk about my thoughts on the US for any length of time, right? You probably already tuned me out, but that was the question, so, yeah, just... Oh, and the state where I live in, I guess I did already talk about that. We live in a very conservative country, in a conservative state within that conservative country, and I wish that we could kind of catch up to the rest of the world. Is the short of the rest of the developed world. That's the short of it. You know, that being said, one of the questions that comes up later, I'm actually going to skip ahead to it because I'm going to about face a little bit. Total MTG asks, have you ever considered going pro, hitting the MTG circuits and GPs, or do you just prefer casual play? I actually sort of I don't want to sound too critical of the US. One thing we do have is a very strong economy, or at least a lot of consumer spending. That's probably a better way of putting it. A lot of consumer spending. And what that means is that a lot of, you know, if you're going to find a tournament for something like Magic, you're going to find it in the US. In that sense, I sort of won the geographic lottery. Because I live in the US. Now granted, it's the Southeast, we don't have a lot relative to some other parts of the country, but I live in the US. If I wait a while, a GP will show up. We have PPTQs all the time. We have we have IQs from Star City Games. There are a lot of tournaments. I could grind. Now, to answer your question, yes, I would love to be a professional Magic player. It would make me very, very happy. I think that I could do that well. You've seen now that I have fewer decks, now that I'm not brewing as much and I'm just playing the decks with which I specialize, my win rate is going up way, way more. I'm playing what I know, and I'm thinking about the game in more of a theoretical sense rather than like deck brewing. So I think that I have the potential to, but that takes a lot of money. Even if you live in the right part of the world, right? That still takes a lot of money to get to that point. And I don't have the money to grind. I was looking this weekend, a friend of mine, TJ, the friend who plays Jun's Dredgevine on this channel, he said, so he invited me to come with him to a tournament on Saturday. Fine, that's great. It's a standard IQ. I would love to. It's $30. It's $30. For some people, that is nothing. That's fine. $30 on a weekend for an IQ where you can get a lot of packs, or maybe this was a PPTQ. I may be mistaken about that. That sounds great, right? But in my financial situation right now, I just can't. Hopefully, we'll see how the custody case goes. We'll see how getting a job, I have a job, but getting a job that pays more goes. We'll see how all of that works out. But in the meantime, I can't. I would love to. Hopefully in the next year or so, I'll be able to start actively grinding, especially non-standard events. I still have Legacy, I still have Modern, but Standard too, I hope. I might even be able to do a little bit thanks to working with The Missing Piece. The owner there has expressed interest in me representing the store. So if that works out, that would be amazing. That would be awesome. Go to a tournament, wear the t-shirt, and whatever else I need to do, pass out business cards or get on camera and like flash the shirt or something like that. I don't know, whatever. But that would be awesome. I would love to, very, very much. Am I pro or against wobbling? For those of you that don't know what that is, it's another Super Smash Bros. Melee question. Wobbling is basically as far as I'm aware, it's the only infinite in Melee. I mean, yes, you can like wave shine someone against a wall, but other than that, I think it's the only infinite in the game. You grab someone with, I think it's usually your lead. I don't know if you can do it with the back, with whichever one is your secondary, but let's say you're Popo and Nana in that order. Popo grabs, pummels, and then Nana forward tilts, and then, and you just keep A, or Z, A, Z, A, Z, whatever. I use A. And you just, if you have the right rhythm, and if they didn't mash out from the first grab, they're stuck. You can, as long as you don't mess that rhythm up, you can deal any number of percentage damage to them, and then any hit, take them out. In other words, it's kind of broken, right? It's kind of broken. They obviously didn't mean to put that in the game. Now, I would say that that's okay. What I mean by that is that, I'm not saying it's okay that it's broken. I'm saying that wobbling should not be banned. There have been tournaments where wobbling has been banned. The Ice Climbers are so bad without it, and still not great with it, that I think that the Ice Climbers deserve to keep wobbling around. It forces your opponent to play in a different way. I like the way that Extra Credits put it in their fighting game episode, or one of them anyway, where they say that they didn't compare it to wobbling, but I'm going to try to paraphrase here. Wobbling is kind of like in Street Fighter, when you play E-Honda, just jabbing over and over again. That'll get you through easy mode. That might get you past some opponents, but when you get to higher levels of play, players have better options, and they know how to use those better options. Or Zerg rushing in StarCraft, sort of. When Zerg rushing is the easiest thing to do, that's fine, that gets you by. Actually, in StarCraft, there are sometimes Zerg rushing might still be the best option, but at least when you get to higher levels of play, there are other things that you can do to counter it, to play through it, that sort of thing. The other races have game because they have other things that they can do, which is probably how I would compare it to Wobbling. Every character has their own gimmicks and whatnot. I think Ice Climbers are pretty poor, if not for their Wave Dash and not for their Wobbling. Sopo is mid to bottom tier. If you lose your Nana, you have a very bad character. Your area mobility is very low, so on and so forth, right? So that's why I'm okay with Wobbling. That being said, I have never been wobbled before. Then again, I have also not played an Ice Climber in person, which means I will be wobbled the first time I play them. That's how that works, right? I mean, I'm Luigi. It's going to happen. If I were a Jigglypuff, maybe not. I'd probably bring in Jigglypuff to fight the Ice Climbers. I think so. Stay in the air long enough, use my superior aerial mobility. It's kind of dangerous with Luigi. If you make your wave approach and you just forward tilt and then shield and then shield grab, you're done. That's your stock. But I'm okay with Wobbling. You just have to be very careful when playing around them. I guess they're sort of a tank with a ton of armor in the front and paper around the other sides. If you know how to play around the front, if you know how to play around the one side, you know, the rest of it's fairly easy. I think that's how I see the Ice Climbers. Anyway, what got me into MTG? That's already been answered. It's my friends. But thank you nonetheless, MTG Onuba, for that question. And I didn't say the pro or against Wobbling. That was Mulwan. Thank you for that question as well. What is my favorite format? Asked Roberto Morales. Mine is Legacy with High Tide, he says, which kudos to you. That is a very hard deck to pilot. That is one of the hardest decks that I know of anyway to pilot. Legacy is my favorite format as well, which is, it's unfortunate that the format is dying. I love it. Even when I had my duels, if they had just screwed the reserve list and printed duels, I still would have been okay because it means more Legacy players against whom I can play. That would be awesome by me. Legacy is my favorite format, and I haven't played High Tide in Legacy, but I've played Solidarity in Vintage. Solidarity is another High Tide deck, and Vintage is almost Legacy, right? No, it feels very different, even though by the cards it's actually pretty close. But that's one of my most watched videos on the channel, Vintage Solidarity. Go and check that out. It's a crazy deck. Even though you never see me fully combo off my opponent's scoops before I can finish the combo, oh, it's a crazy deck. Next one. Let's see. Update us about your card gaming, maybe. I'm not sure what Paulo, A-R-A-U-J-O, however you say that, forgive me. I'm not sure what card gaming... So I'm going to answer both questions, I guess. If you're referring to Magic, well, yeah, that does seem to be, based on what's said before that does seem to be what he's talking about. So as far as Magic goes, I still have a handful of decks, and you're seeing a lot more content on the channel where it's me recording to other people play, simply because I don't have as many cards to brew decks with and whatnot. You are seeing me borrow cards for other decks. I rebuilt Army of the Dredge by borrowing a bunch of cards. So, hopefully you'll see that going forward. I have a very generous... The owner of the LGS at which I play, he's been very generous to me. And I would not be able to have nearly as much content without, so I appreciate that very strongly. If you're watching this, Josh, you rock. You hear me? You rock. Alright. So that looks to be all of the YouTube questions. Now, I have a few questions that were asked of me in person and one on Reddit, so I'll get to those. The first one is, this is the one from Reddit, and I'm summarizing the question very quickly. Distortion Strike or Slip Through Space? If I had to pick between those two, which one would I pick? And I could try this off the top of my head, but I've already answered this question on Reddit, so I just want to read that back to you, if you wouldn't mind. I've been thinking about Slip Through Space a great deal since it was spoiled. Leave it to an Infect main like me to be most hyped for a common. Yes, that was the card I was most hyped for in Oath of the Gatewatch, a common, because of Infect. Both of them are essentially 2 cards for 1 mana, the former of which actually replaces itself, Slip Through Space, draw a card, while the latter boosts the creature itself. I play more patiently than a lot of Infect pilots that I see, so I appreciate the passive pump and longer effect that comes with Distortion Strike, as well as the free cast that Rebound gives me since I have more mana to work with on the next turn. Although this is not without cost. For instance, I actually only run 3 Becomaments in my list precisely because I also run 3 Distortion Strike, which doesn't actually enter the graveyard on the first turn that it's cast and thus cannot be delved as readily. Additionally, the new Eldrazi decks can stop the rebound by processing the spell on their turn. A strong advantage to Slip Through Space, of course, is that it helps us to get back into the game. Infect tends to peter out after the first 6 turns, maybe a couple more for more conservative players, but it rarely has the kind of draw engine that lets it come back into the game from behind. On a side note, well, before I get back to that, that's one reason why I like Legacy Infect a lot. You have Brainstorm. You have Gitaxian Pro, but you have Brainstorm. It's always good when you can fit Brainstorm into your aggro deck. Your aggro combo control deck. Because it lets us get back into the game more readily. Overall, my preference is to run Distortion Strike, but I can see Slip Through Space working more effectively in faster builds that try to outrace the opponent more readily. You can disagree with me on that, feel more than free to. They're a lot more similar than people tend to give them credit for. The +1/+0 isn't actually as relevant to me as you might think it is, but that can be relevant. Your creature is 1 power, +1 from Distortion Strike, +4 on the first turn, so that's 6. Your creature is 1 power, +1 from Distortion Strike, +2 from Mutagenic Growth. On the second turn, that's a kill. That wouldn't have worked with Slip Through Space. I like that it gives you 2 turns of unblockability. It does not replace itself, though. You can use Slip Through Space on your opponent's creature so that you draw a card if you absolutely have to. You can't do that with Distortion Strike. Distortion Strike is blank if you don't have a creature. There's a number of... You can go back and forth. One is not strictly better than the other. My preference still is Distortion Strike. Take that for whatever it's worth. However, I can see a deck that wants to run Slip Through Space more than Distortion Strike. Maybe you're trying to combo off more quickly. If you ever ask the question, could I run Pact of Negation in my Infect deck? You might want Slip Through Space. that might work better in your deck. But I'm not that Infect player, not personally. Alright, so now for some other questions. This one isn't actually in the form of a question, but this is how it was asked to me. I credit to... Oh, by the way, the last one was asked by the Redditor Neigsus. N-E-I-G-H-S-U-S. Thank you for the question. Hope I pronounced that correctly. This next one was asked by Brian, and it was just one word. Well, not one word, it wasn't a question. Eternal Masters! What do I think about Eternal Masters? As I said before, even if I lost a ton, thousands of dollars of value on my duels getting reprinted, I would have been perfectly okay with it. So, obviously, I love the idea of Eternal Masters. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat to that, because I had been anticipating this for a long, long time, and I knew I was ready to be hyped, to be excited for for Eternal Masters. I thought it would be called Legacy Masters, but whatever, I'll take it. But that isn't actually what my first reaction was. when I heard the news, when I saw the news on Reddit, my first reaction was that I actually got literally physically sick to my stomach. I felt nauseous. Because I would still have my duels if I didn't have to sell them. And I looked on TCG Player right afterwards, and the duels that I just sold shot up, you know, in the case of Tropical Island, they went up 10% over the price for which I sold them, and I imagine that Bree is probably smiling. I imagine she's not terribly unpleased at hearing that. And then after I had a moment to just take a step back and, you know, think outside of my circumstances, just Eternal Masters is getting printed, and Force of Will is in there, and it's gorgeous, it's friggin' gorgeous, and Wasteland is in there, we get another Wasteland printing, but you know, that's cool, that's awesome. I'm really excited. I hope it's going to be more like Modern Masters 1 than Modern Masters 2. Modern Masters 1, your commons and uncommons, you had a decent number of playables in the format itself. Off the top of my head, I can't think of very many. It's been a while since I've looked at the Modern Masters list. But cards like Manamorphose, for instance, that's the first one that comes to mind. I'm beating myself up for not remembering. But in the case of Modern Masters 2, you had Lightning Bolt and Remand. And that was basically it. Everything else, if it was playable in Modern, it was a rare or a mythic. I hope that they do more like Modern Masters 1 in that sense. Really, really hope. Oh my goodness. I would love that. I would love that so much. I want to draft the ever-living heck out of this set. I thought at first it was just going to be digital. It's in print too! Oh my god, it's Magical Christmas Land has come to us, Magic players. Okay, so, yeah, I'm excited. Notwithstanding my own circumstances, I am excited. Oh my goodness, I am excited. Yes! Okay, so, if that's not clear enough, here, one moment. Alright. The next question is, didn't you used to play Yu-Gi-Oh? And yes, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh. I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh quite a while before I had started playing Magic. Even though my parents thought that that was satanic too, again, just borrow cards. Or eventually I got the ability to buy some cards, and I had my own deck. And it wasn't Tier 1, but I took my hiatus from Yu-Gi-Oh! After a certain card of mine got banned. It was Royal Oppression. And if you played Yu-Gi-Oh! Back when Royal Oppression was legal as a 3-of, you probably hated that card. Unless you had it in your deck, you probably hated that card, right? And my deck was made to abuse that. It was made to make Royal Oppression asymmetrical. Royal Oppression says pay 800 life points, negate a special summon. You or your opponent can do that. Well, I could do that to my opponent, but my opponent couldn't do that to me because I didn't special summon. Granted, this was before the Pendulums, this was before Ixies. This might have been before Synchros. I remember this was back when the big three were Gladiator Beast, Black Wings, and Lightsworns, not necessarily in that order. And I played this anti-meta deck that played 3 Royal Oppression and a bunch of, like, I played Donzalug, I played Spirit Reaper. It was just a, not I get card advantage, but I'm giving you card disadvantage deck. That was just my play style for whatever reason. And it worked. It worked. Wish I could remember. I'm worried about saying this incorrectly because I'm on camera. I don't want anyone to think I'm lying. So it's probably better if I don't guess. I don't want someone to suppose that I'm messing with, that I'm fooling you. But there was a tournament. It was a regionals. I don't remember the year. It was in Atlanta. And I came in 9th place at that one, playing this anti-meta deck. 9th, or maybe it was 9th and they did like a 9th through 12th or some range like that. Maybe that was it. Maybe it was either 9th or it was a range like 9th through 12th or 9th through 16th. 9th was part of it. Somewhere in that was 9th. So that was something that I very much enjoyed. I loved making, even back then, I knew that, I guess maybe I had a little bit of a white magic player in me at the time, taking these symmetrical effects and making them asymmetrical, playing Wrath of God when I don't have any creatures out, playing Suppression Field when I don't have any activated abilities, that sort of thing. Alright. Now the next question comes to us from TJ, the Jund Dredgevine player. Can we see more deck tech videos? And the answer is yes! I would love to put more deck tech videos out. I don't have as many cards, I haven't been brewing as many decks, and so I haven't made deck techs. That is why. That is the reason why. Hopefully I'll be able to put other people's deck techs up. I think that would be great to do. And yeah, we'll see how it goes in the not too distant future. In the future. Maybe I can make deck techs with proxy cards. The lack of quality to that just seems like it would make it not even worth doing. But if you disagree, leave a comment. My favorite homebrew. I'm gonna do a top X, where X probably equals 10, but I don't know. A top X homebrews of mine video at some point before too long. I know what's going to be number 1 unless the circumstances surrounding it mean that it can't be number 1. Because it was a birthing pod deck, and so it's banned. In fact, I never got to play the optimal version of it because it was banned. So perhaps not. Perhaps that isn't actually... well, it is my favorite. It's the one that I enjoyed playing the most, by a mile. This was the Delve Pod deck. It was essentially mono black control, but it also had green for cards like Abrupt Decay, and for paying for birthing pods, Phyrexian mana, and had I made it a little bit further, it would have also had white, just a single Godless Shrine, for casting Unburial Rites, so that tells you something. So it was a essentially mono black control deck. You just attack their hand, kill their creatures, wrath the board, that sort of thing, until you get Birthing Pod out and a Delve creature. Now at the time, the only Delve creatures that were any good, I had Tombstalker, which is an 8-drop, and I had a Shambling Attendants, which is an 8-drop, but which sucks. But it didn't matter, it was an 8-drop. I could Birthing Pod this 8-drop into Iona, Shield of Emeria. You see where this is going, this is beautiful. Blazing Archon, or as I like to call it, 420 Blazed Archon. And I was experimenting with Inkwell Leviathan. So basically it was, if I'm trying to not lose to an aggro deck, 420 Archon comes in. If I'm trying to not lose to a combo deck, Iona comes in. If I'm trying not to lose to a control deck, Inkwell Leviathan comes in. And it was never that simple. Inkwell only really got around spot removal and got through blue lands. That was really it. It eventually didn't make the cut. Now, had we made it just a little bit further, had we been able to get Gurmag Angler into this deck, we could pod that into Grizzlebrand, and there were some other 8-drops. I don't remember off the top of my head which ones I was considering, but Grizzlebrand! How can you go wrong with that, right? You just play your mono black control game until you play a 1-mana Gurmag Angler, and then pod that into a 7/7 lifelink flying Yawgmoth's Bargain. Yeah, this would have been silly. It was still great given what we had. Looking back at it, I would have traded Inkwell Leviathan out for Unburial Rites, and maybe would have put more Unburial Rites in there. It did get a little bit awkward when you happen to have an Iona or a Blazing Archon in your hand and you couldn't really cast them. If you're a Polymorph player and you have an Emrakul in your hand, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. the card that is actually dead in the game, unless you can get it as part of the combo. It's just a blank card if it's in your hand. Burial Rites would maybe give me a way around that. If I could discard it somehow, say with Smallpox, and then reanimate it. Oh, that's sick. Last question. What's up with the headphones and the avatar? Well, I say last question. There's one more, but it's a silly question. I used to work at a radio station, WUOG 90.5 FM, and I used to have a radio drama that went on for a season. Over there was a semester, so 8 seasons is 4 years. We went on for 4 years. It was a D&D radio drama, which is to say that for 3 hours from midnight to 3 a.m., we played Dungeons & Dragons on the radio. It was a dream job, right? Well, it wasn't a job, I didn't get paid for it. But it was a dream come true, right? I got to be the dungeon master, I got to do some script writing, I got to manage a cast, I got to work with the radio equipment, the computer, I got to do lots of research for the episodes. Oh my goodness, I loved it. It was hectic and I loved it. It was called Parties and Parodies. It is no longer ongoing, unfortunately. When you are no longer a student at the university where the radio station is, you can no longer be a DJ, so you can no longer host your own show. So it had to end when I graduated. But it was great. And so because I was on there, I put some headphones in because I liked the image of myself being on the radio and that I have a set of headphones on. Didn't have this piece though, but I used this too for work and recording and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's all. That's the reason why. And then the last question was a very silly one. It's what's your favorite card in Magic? Have you met our Lord and Savior Glistener Elf? The OG. You are great. You are great. This guy right here. And that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this episode. I really appreciate 3,000 subs. Wow. Hopefully before too long, we'll have another AMA. We'll have the 4,000 sub AMA. I look forward to it, and I will see you later. Take care. Now before I let you go, I have actually one more question. This came after the initial recording from 0ix7, one of the Patreon sponsors, or one of the patrons. Thank you very much for that, by the way. Your question is, what is my favorite non-infect deck that I've played? Now you don't list what format, so I'm going to assume any format, in which case it's Solidarity and Vintage. I alluded to that in a previous question, but it absolutely has to be that deck. I like tricky combo control decks, just because they seem very engaging to me. Being able to survive until you're ready to combo off, and then having a tough combo to pull off, is very mentally engaging. It's interesting, I think. And it's cool to watch. Sometimes, if the opponent's doing, if you're playing it quickly enough, and you're not staring and going, now which one do I do? Do I ponder, or do I preordain? Yeah, if you're not doing that for too long, it can be kind of interesting to watch, which is why Feline Longboar is one of my favorite SCG grinders to watch. Now, you also say, try to build around Hunted Phantasm in Modern. Modern, while I'm at it. My favorite non-infect deck in Modern, specifically, would be Delvepod. It was the, I think I may have mentioned that in a previous question as well, when I did the initial recording. Play a mono-black control game until you can Birthing Pod your giant delve creature like Tombstalker into Iona or Blazing Archon, 420 Blazed Archon. You actually asked me to build around Hunted Phantasm in Modern because you've given enough. You get once a month to request a card that I will build a deck around. So Hunted Phantasm is a 4/6 from somewhere in Ravnica block. Its cost is 1 blue. It is unblockable, but because it's part of the Hunted cycle, it gives your opponent some creatures as well. In this case, 5/1/1 red goblins. So I will do my best to build a modern deck around that. I guarantee you I'll have to make proxies for it, so I won't be able to take it to a sanctioned event. But I'm sure I have enough people that can play casually with me. We can get games in with this card. Hunted Phantasm, to me, looks like the kind of card that I would want to build around anyway. It looks fascinating, endlessly fascinating. And I think I can break it. I can try at least. Anyway, I'll see you later. Take care, YouTube. Team Listener Elf signing off.